Welcome, friends. My name is Kimberly from Drip from the Crypt, where we make Halloween and spooky themed candles, products, enamel pins, apparel, all that sort of stuff. So if you're into that sort of thing in the spooky community, please go ahead and give us a follow and hit like and subscribe, all that jazz. Welcome back. It's been a couple months. I know, kind of crazy. I wanted to create videos, but we have been so slammed, so busy. We've been signing up for a ton of spooky themed shows.
It's showtime.
And we've been so busy with that. We've been selling a lot of candles at those shows. So it's really been taking up like a lot of my time, because we'll go to a show and we'll blow through our product and I have to re-up everything. And so, but I'm not complaining that we've been super busy, super awesome. I will definitely be dedicating way more time to recording and the YouTube channel because I definitely want to grow this. And just in the past couple of months, I have learned so much. A big point of the YouTube was that I wanted us to like grow together. And as I go through my journey, I wanted to show you just my trials and tribulations and just things that I have learned along the way. So yeah, we're back. I'll definitely be posting more consistently. And for my first video back, I wanted to talk about something bad that happened. One of my candles had a sinkhole.
Bless the coming and going of him. May his passage.
It's okay, folks. We're going to get through this together. Normally, a sinkhole isn't a huge deal. Actually, sinkhole happen in candles all the time. It's very common. It's just one of those things. I mean, candles, making them, it's very temperamental. I feel like you'll have your technique down and then another little curveball will get thrown at you. So it's perfectly normal, and it happened to me. So when I got mine, I was devastated, not because it was the end of the world because my first pour wasn't perfect, no. But my candles, I marble them as you've seen. A lot of my candles, ow, oh, I just kicked the thing. So normally a sinkhole isn't a big deal, totally fixable, and we're gonna run through it right now. But I was super upset about mine because I marble mine. A lot of my candles are marbled. It just adds a super cool color. I'll link my other marbling video right up here or right here, whichever one, so you can see what I'm talking about. I'd been making tons of candles, and this was when we actually just started doing events. And this is when we actually started selling a higher volume of candles. So I had finished a batch of candles and I had started marbling them, which is its own process. And I noticed one of them had like a bump on top. So I was like, okay, like whatever, maybe it's just like a blemish or what have you. I took a little poker, I poked it, and there was like this giant sea cavern underneath it. Once something goes wrong with your candles, it all goes through your mind. Like, oh my gosh, how many of them had sinkholes? Is it every single candle that I've had that had sinkholes? Are people's candles burning like all crazy? And no, it's all gonna be okay. So if you're having and experiencing these thoughts, don't worry, it's okay. In fact, sinkholes, even though they're cosmetically weird and they can cause problems, for the most part, they're small enough to where if you don't catch one, it's not going to interrupt the burn too badly. It just kind of depends on the sinkhole, how big it is, where it is, what have you. What is a sinkhole? What the heck am I even talking about? So a sinkhole is essentially a dip within your candle that occurs after it's dried. So in your candle, you may see it. It'll be typically underneath the surface, possibly around the wick. It could happen in different locations, but you'll notice it's like a divot or like a deep hole in your candle. They're not always just visibly on the surface or noticeable. There could be one sinkhole, you could have a couple sinkholes in there. It kind of depends on the type of wax and just the situation of what happened. And a sinkhole should not be confused with tunneling. Tunneling is a completely different phenomenon, which we'll go ahead and do a different video on, one of these days. So a sinkhole is a very common phenomenon. It's going to happen to virtually every candle maker at some point in their journey. And it's super common, and it can happen for a multitude of reasons. One of the most significant and prominent reasons of why a sinkhole occurs is due to the high temperatures that we're pouring the hot wax at. So you melt your wax, it's melted, it's at the temperature, you've already poured all of the fragrance oil and everything in there, it's ready to go. When you pour your hot wax into your jar or your vessel, of course, the wax is very hot. Slowly but surely, the hot wax is going to cool, and as hot wax cools, it shrinks and it contracts. But as you notice, when you pour your candles, they tend to shrink after they cool. It's just physics, or it's chemistry, or whatever. However, the issue lies that when you are pouring your hot wax into your jar or what have you, the jar itself is a little bit cooler than the hot liquid that you're pouring into the jar. So what's going to happen is that also, since you're pouring your hot wax into the cooler jar, the areas of the hot wax that are touching the coolness are going to dry a little bit faster than the rest of the wax. So since the outer area of the hot wax is now cooling, it's going to cling to the sides of the jar. As the rest of the wax is starting to contract naturally, just due to the normal curing process, that some of the wax is going to stick to the sides and the rest is going to sink a little, causing a sinkhole to lay dormant in your gorgeous little candle. I know, it's sad. But do not fret, my sweet innocent children. There are methods that we can take to fix this and also prevent it, which I'm going to show you right now. So the first method on preventing sinkholes is to really look into the type of wax that you're using, because some waxes are going to be better for preventing sinkholes than others. If avoiding cosmetic blemishes and sinking, if that's something that's important to you in terms of avoidance, then you'll want to look at something that's called a single pore wax. And a single pore wax is formulated so that you don't have to go back in and fix any cosmetic issues that can likely happen to your candle. You'll only have to pour it once to achieve a really good looking candle, versus other waxes that are not a single pore wax or are like a second pore wax. Oftentimes they're a great wax and they may have a great hot throw, or they may perform really well when they're burning. However, they'll have a higher likelihood of having some cosmetic issues after that first single pour. So they could be bumpy, there could be sinkholes, they could shrink a lot, which means you probably won't want to sell your candle if it has a lot of cosmetic issues. So you'll have to go back in for like a second pour. Hence, the single pour type of wax, you really don't have any of those issues. Second tip for preventing sinkholes, I did this in the very beginning. I don't do this anymore. It was helpful in the beginning, but honestly for me, it just takes way too much time, especially for how many candles I'm making now versus as I was in the beginning. If I was only making 10 candles at a time, then I'd probably be able to do this, but I don't do this anymore. But it is really helpful for this situation, and it's heating up your jars before you pour your wax. So as I was mentioning earlier, when you're pouring your wax into your jar, if you don't heat up the jar first, the jar itself is going to be cool to the touch. So when you pour your wax inside, your wax is going to cool immediately on the outsides, and it's going to increase the likelihood that you get a sinkhole, because like I mentioned, the wax is going to stick, and while it contracts, it's going to pull and cause a sinkhole. So a way that you can prevent this is if you could heat up your jar somehow, so when you're pouring the hot wax in, it's less clash of temperatures causing a cooling effect in the wax that fast, you can prevent sinkholes. One way you can do this is you can turn your oven on to the very lowest setting. So I think my lowest setting is like 170. So while you're preparing your candles, while you're melting your wax and stirring in your fragrance oils, you could actually put your jars in the oven. I would get a baking sheet, something to put them on so your candles don't crack or what have you. Leave them in there until you're ready. If it's on the lowest setting, they won't get that hot. They'll just be warm. Of course, if you do a higher setting, your glass is going to be really hot. But you want to avoid getting your glass too hot so that they don't explode or that they don't crack. So if you put it on the lowest setting, I believe mine was, like 170 degrees Fahrenheit. If you leave them in there while you're prepping your wax, and then once you're ready, and then you pour your wax into the already warmed jars, you're going to decrease the likelihood that you get sinkholes. So another method to prevent sinkholes in your candles is actually elevating them on a rack during the curing and cooling process. So after you have poured your candles into your jars, you're ready for them to cool, and you're going to set them away for a couple days for them to cure. What you can do is you can get like a metal wire rack. So just like the one I'm showing you here. Once you're done pouring your candles, go ahead and set them on a rack that's elevated them from the counter space, because what's going to happen is that it's going to provide more of an even cooling effect versus if you put it on a countertop, which may hold heat more, the candle is not going to get a very even cooling. So by elevating it and putting on a rack, you're allowing it to have more airflow, and it's just going to be more consistent. Okay, so my final method for you for preventing sinkholes after you have poured your candles into your jars is to poke what's called relief holes into your candles. So this needs to be done before they have cured all the way. So you've poured your candles, you've waited a couple minutes, and things are just starting to sort of like they're starting to turn opaque, they're starting to dry, they're starting to harden on the top a little bit. This is when you want to poke relief holes, because this is when things are starting to get sticky, and this is when sinkholes are starting to form. So go ahead and take a toothpick, or you can take a chopstick, something that's clean, because you want it to be sanitary, of course, nothing that's dirty or that has been previously used. You're going to want to take that poker and poke holes all around the top of the candle. And what this is going to do is it's going to pop any air holes that might be forming, and it's going to allow some breathing and some relief for the candle itself. You'll only want to do this if you for sure have like either a heat gun or a hair dryer that you can go back in and smooth off the top of your candles later on. Because by poking holes in your candle, you'll see, it's going to cause some bumps on top of the candle, which can totally be smoothed out later. But it's easier to smooth out just a couple of bumps on top of your candle than having to go back and fill a sinkhole later. So, oh yeah, and be careful of that. If you're doing this method, and say if you're doing a bunch of different scents, you'll want to make sure you use a different instrument for each scent, because you don't want to get your flavors all mixed up. I have like an orange scent, and then I also have like a coffee scent. And even though that might go well together if they were mixed together, but yeah, so just be sure that you keep your instruments separate when you're doing the hole poking. Okay, so let's go into how you can fix a sinkhole. So imagine you just poured your candles, you're so excited, you're like, woo, the tops are so smooth, they're looking awesome. And then you notice, wait a minute, there's sinkholes inside here. Do not fret, my pet, they can totally be fixed. So my personal favorite method is using a heat gun. You can see right here, I actually already kind of poked around with a sterile toothpick just to find my sinkhole. And there is a big fat sinkhole in there, which I'm gonna fix with this heat gun right here. So go ahead and take your heat gun, and you can put it on the lowest setting, should be fine. You want to be the most careful. And honestly, you should be wearing gloves during this. My gloves broke, so I'm in between gloves right now, but you want to protect your hands because that's what we craft with. So you'll want to go ahead and poke around in your candle to find your sinkhole. Honestly, this is not the largest sinkhole that you can have. It was a pretty little one, but you see it is a hole in there, and I find them really close to my wick. So I'm just a perfectionist when it comes to my candles. So I want to make sure that they're all fixed, and it's just, I don't have to deal with it, you know? So you're going to take your heat gun, and you're just going to put it on a medium to low setting, and you're going to heat the surface of the candle up as you see I'm doing here. And the candle wax is going to melt, and it's going to naturally just fill up that sinkhole with wax. So you see I'm just going around in circles, making sure I'm just getting it evenly across the whole surface. And I don't know if you can see from here, but that sinkhole is actually getting filled up with wax. So that's literally all you need to do, folks. You're just gonna get the top of the candle nice and just a little bit liquidy, not too much, but just enough so that it fills that sinkhole on its own. Okay, that's my super secret method for fixing sinkholes. Super easy. Honestly, I personally think that the heat gun method is the easiest way, because honestly, you just go and fix it at the end. If you do not have a heat gun, then you could totally use a hair dryer, but I would absolutely recommend using a heat gun. It's so easy. You could buy one at Home Depot or Amazon for like $20 or $30, and it saves my life. I use the heat gun every single time I'm making candles, whether it be my marbling or fixing blemishes. I would totally recommend having a heat gun. I've heard of people using hair dryers, but I think a heat gun is just going to be significantly warmer, and it's just going to be way more efficient. So definitely recommend getting a heat gun. Yeah, So those are all of my recommendations for sinkholes. Not a huge problem, but it is something that happens, and it just helps the aesthetic of your candles and the burn if you fix them. Anywho, folks, that's it. It was a pleasure being back. I will definitely be posting way more consistently. I have a lot of stuff I want to share, and I truly enjoy doing this. So yeah, we've just been super busy, but I'll be on here way more consistently. If you enjoyed this type of content, please be sure to hit like, hit subscribe. Does me a solid, and it allows me to continue making these videos. If you have any questions about anything, feel free to hit the comments below, or I'm available by email. And thank you so much, folks. Well, thank you for your time.